1930 in Wielice, Poland, Phillip Lazowski was born, but he was born during the era of hard times. He was the oldest boy in his family, and he had to take care of his family because in Europe it was his responsibility. As his life carried on, he was living a steady life until 1939 when World War II started. When the war started, Phillip was 11 years old, and very mature for his age. He realized the war was happening after he witnessed his first massacre, as he called it. Phillip was just a boy living in a crazy world, handled himself with poise, and had more courage than anyone I have ever known. His story about how he persevered through these brutal times and horrors is remarkable. His life in the ghetto and in Europe was tougher than living in a third world country today. No control over anything, and can only hope to live another day. The theme of his story is perseverance, pride, and bravery. All he went through is hard to comprehend, but it was the childhood that he recollects. Rabbi Lazowski's story is not an ordinary story, but one of great measure to many extents of life.
At age 11, Phillip realized the war was happening after he witnessed his first massacre. But before the first massacre that he witnessed, there are many different events that caused this war. World War II was started in 1939, but the first cause was the Treaty of Versailles. This contract was for the Germans to sign to cover for the costs for starting World War I. Also, the Germans exceeded the army size limit, and also they gave up land. This was a big impact on Germany because they did not agree with any of this, but they had no choice but to sign it. The second effect to start World War II was the biggest of them all, a man named Adolf Hitler. He became Germany's leader in 1933 and had secretly begun building up Germany's army and weapons for a war. But no one knew there was going to be a war except Hitler. As time went on, Hitler ordered his men to attack little places, but he attacked in order to gain land. But he also was doing this to test out his army to see if they were ready for a bigger fight, such as World War II. The next factor was the failure of appeasement. This was the Germans' way of arguing that France and Russia were targeting them because they had signed a treaty together. Germany and Hitler now thought that they were giving threats towards Hitler. Hitler was unhappy with all the actions that were against him, of course, but once he realized how much power he really had is when he decided to take over. All these actions that have taken place from the end of World War I until 1938 were the fuel to the fire. Hitler just had to ignite it. He did ignite it in 1939 when he attacked Russia and set fire in Europe.
Rabbi Lazowski was the oldest of his 5 siblings. In Europe, it is the oldest son's responsibility to take care of his family and protect them. His entire family hid in the cave in their house, and Phillip was the one who had to stay back and lock the door. Phillip had his first encounter with a German after he locked his family in the cave. The German took him to a marketplace in the ghetto. At the marketplace, they would decide whether you would be used for labor or die. In the marketplace, Phillip witnessed some horrible things. As he states,
a scene which is unbelievable. What was the scene? The scene was that most of the Nazis there and the police that they hired to help them, which was from different nationalities, like the Estonians, the Litva from Lithuania, and Latvia. These people were carrying the rifles with the bayonets, and they were shooting at the people, and I saw a scene that they took a baby from the mother's breast and pushed it through with the bayonet and threw it like a football. So it was unbelievable what I've seen. I also seen the people saw what's going on, that 2 couples, or 1 couple, which means elderly couple, was dancing. I didn't realize that these people were not their mind in order to see what went on in this particular surrounding. So I realized that in front there was a Nazi dressed in yellow, and with the finger he used to go like this and like this, which means if you go facing me to the right, you go to death, and facing to the left, you live. So,
Philip knew that if he went to where they decide if you die or not without a family, they would kill him for sure. His only hope was to find a family that was willing to pretend that he was their son. Philip asked one family, but was declined because the family thought it was too big of a risk. Philip asked one more family if they would lie for him, and the woman responded, "If they let me live with 2 children, they will let me live with 3. The family consisted of a mother, a son, and her daughter Ruth. They went to the German who was in charge of making the decision, and thankfully they let him live. Philip was so grateful of the family who saved his life. He ran back to his house to free his family from the cave, and he saw 5 dead people outside of his home. Philip fainted at the sight. These people were not members of his family, but he thought they were. Philip lived in the shadows for the remainder of the Holocaust. When it was over, he came over to the United States. While Philip was attending Yeshiva University, fate led him to an amazing turn in the story.
At the Yeshiva University, there was a custom in the school that anybody who gets married, the whole class is invited. So I was invited to the wedding. At the wedding, I was sitting next to a young lady. I couldn't dance because I never danced, and I didn't ask her to dance. And we were a whole table, but she and I left. So we started a conversation. And the conversation began the following. Like, for instance, where were you born, this kind of thing. And I mentioned that I was born in a little town that you never heard, Bielica. Well, she said, "You're born in Bielica? I have a girlfriend that told us that they saved a boy from Bielica, but they don't know if he's alive. I don't know, and they don't know his name even." So I asked her, how did she save the boy? And she told me this story. I didn't want to interrupt her. She told me the same story that I told you. And then I said to her, "You know, I'm the boy. Where's the family live?" The family lives in Hartford, Connecticut. So I went down stairs. I called the operator, and I said I would like to get the telephone from this and this. And they told me the name is Rabinowitz, and there are, she said, "Which Rabinowitz?" I says, "Morris Rabinowitz," because that's what the lady told me. And they said there are 5 Rabinowitzes. Which one they want? I told them to pick the first one, and they picked the right one. And whoever answered was the lady that saved my life. So I told her that we're going to come. I mean, I had a conversation with her, and I thanked her and all this. I'm so happy that you're alive and the family. And I told her that I'm going to come to see her next time I have a chance. I have a cousin that knew the story because I told him what transpired and so on. So he took me to Hartford, Connecticut. And when I came to Hartford, Connecticut, this lady was sitting on a porch, or standing on a porch. And I told my cousin, "That's the lady." I never forgot her in my mind, how she looks. And I told her, that's the lady. And that was the lady that's standing on the porch. And that's, in other words, I didn't see her for 11 years since the massacre took place.
And then you just continued to bond with each other once you talked with
Then,
them?
of course, I had a cousin by the name of Dr. Lesser who lived here in Boston. So they used to invite me to come over, and also I had an aunt that lived in Boston. They used to invite me to come over. But Hartford, Connecticut is in the middle between Boston and New York. So at times I used to stop at Hartford in order to be with the family. And that's how I got to know Ruth.
And Ruth was one of the little girls in line?
Yeah, Ruth was the two girls. She was one of the girls and one of the two girls in the line.
And who is Ruth today? Like, what is she now to you?
What is she now?
Yeah.
She's a Bobby. She's my wife, of course, and we married. We had 3 sons and 7 grandchildren. And
as Philip reflects back on his story, he is worried that there will be no more people like him to tell the story of the Holocaust. Already there are people who believed it didn't happen, but Philip encourages people like us to hear the stories and pass them on to future generations. This is great help so that the story of the Holocaust and the story of Philip will always be passed on. We cannot forget about the millions of innocent people who were murdered during that awful time period. Philip feels it is important for us to always remember,
and the blood of your neighbor is being spilled. The whole world stood by and did nothing, which is a quote from the book of Leviticus, chapter 19, verse 16. You cannot stand idle by when your neighbor's blood is being shed. Now, unfortunately, nobody cared. People were murdered, people were gassed, people were burned to life. Take a look what the Nazis did. They're intelligent, so they used to use the gas in order to gas people and to burn them alive. Is this were ethics, that was morals, etc. That is so important for us to know.